If you're tired of making promises to yourself and then breaking them, then this is the video for you. Just a couple of years ago, I was a guy who had a lot of ambition. I wanted to be a straight A student, I wanted to be a star athlete, and be someone who was quite intellectual. But I had accomplished none of these goals. Not because I wasn't talented, but because I didn't know how to be disciplined and work towards them. Instead, I would just end up being distracted with social media and constantly end up procrastinating things. But that isn't who I am anymore. I am now someone who wakes up at 4 a.m., then I do about 4 hours of deep focused work. I lift weights at the gym, train martial arts 6 days a week, and I finish reading a book every month. I'm now living the lifestyle that I'd always wanted to live ever since I was a teenager. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 2 principles that allowed me to make this transformation possible. Now keep in mind that this isn't going to be just some feel-good advice. These principles are going to require you to make some serious lifestyle changes, but they have worked so ridiculously well for me and the dozens of people that I've worked with, so they're definitely worth putting some effort into. Let's get right into them. The most impactful change that I have made in my life has been my diet. I'll break my dietary journey down into 3 stages. In stage 1, I quit all types of food that you get in packets. Things like Oreos, Snickers, Pepsi, and I quit other forms of fast foods like burger, pizza, french fries. Just making this one singular change will boost your discipline by at least 30%. The reason why I felt such a significant boost in my discipline was because fast food was killing me in 2 ways. Firstly, because it just makes you feel satisfied and content with life. When you drink that can of Coke that is just filled with sugar, your brain releases this pleasure-inducing chemical called dopamine. And this is what makes you feel a bit too relaxed and content with things. And once you get used to feeling this way, then believe me, it becomes very hard to do things that require effort. Secondly, the ingredients that are being put in 90% of these things that come in packets are just micro doses of poison. Like, think about it. There is no such thing such as an Oreo tree or an Oreo animal. These things do not exist in nature. They were actually created in some lab with the sole mission of making it as pleasurable as possible to eat, so that the person gets hooked to that product and keeps coming back to it. And once these unnatural ingredients get in your system, you might feel good for a short amount of time, like when you're actually eating that burger. But a few minutes or hours later, you are going to start feeling a bit low. You might even start feeling tired and sleepy and feel like you're having a hard time focusing on things. All of these are symptoms that your body is having a very hard time digesting the things that you're putting in it. Once I understood the damage that fast food was doing to me, I started making some changes. The first thing that I did was that I started shifting towards whole natural foods. These are foods that are not processed and usually have one single ingredient that is naturally occurring. Things like fruits, dates, honey, meat, fish, eggs. Initially, when I was making this switch from processed food to whole natural food, things were a bit hard because firstly, I was just so addicted to these sugar-filled processed things and my brain made me crave them. Secondly, because now I had to spend more time researching, reading labels, making somewhat of a meal plan, and the fact that my groceries now costed a lot more. But I kid you not, within a few weeks of making these dietary changes, my focus, my energy levels, my mood, all of them got better. So this initial period of struggle and the extra cost of groceries is 100% worth it in my opinion. The second stage of my dietary journey consisted of fasting. Fasting is basically when you do not eat food for a particular period of time. Turns out that when you give your body some break from constantly having to digest and break down food, then it begins to perform a lot of cool repair functions within you. Firstly, it balances out your hormones. This meant that I felt a lot more awake and focused during the day when I was actually working. And the quality of my sleep got way better when I was resting at night. Secondly, during a reasonably long fast, your body begins to eat dead and decaying cells, and this will really boost your energy levels and make you feel light and unburdened. Lastly, your body also begins to produce something called ketones, which is an alternative source of fuel and is considered as superfood for the brain. There are numerous studies on how ketones impact your mood and your focus levels positively. So what I do now is that on most days, I fast for about 15 hours a day. I know this sounds like a lot, especially if you're new to fasting, but to be honest, it is quite easily attainable with a little bit of practice. I have my dinner 2 hours before I go to bed. Then I sleep for around 7.5 hours. And then you push your breakfast by a few hours. And before you know it, you have completed a 15-hour fast. I've noticed that during the mornings when I'm in a fasted state and my body does not have anything to digest, that is when I feel the most focused and productive. And that is exactly when I schedule most of my cognitively demanding work. Also, once in a week, typically during my off day, I do a longer fast. The fasting community calls this OMAD, which stands for 1 meal a day. It basically means that you skip breakfast, you skip lunch, and just have your dinner. And this feels like such a detox. If you're feeling a bit sad, or you're feeling a bit out of energy, or you ate something that you really should have avoided, then one of these long fasts will really help you reset yourself. If you're someone who has never given fasting a shot, then I highly recommend that you join the fasting community on Reddit. And I also recommend that you check out some videos by Dr. Sten Ekberg and Dr. Eric Berg. These were my resources when I started my fasting journey. I now feel empowered having this powerful tool of fasting in my toolkit. Now, although I felt amazing during this fasting window, especially during the mornings where I could just get so much work done, there was just one problem. As soon as I had my first meal, I would start feeling tired and sluggish, and that was pretty much the end of my productivity during the day. I would feel this way even though I was eating whole, natural, unprocessed food. The ways that I found to combat this mid-afternoon crash was firstly by reducing my carb intake. So I did some calculations and I found out that I was eating about 150 grams of carbs a day. And having too many carbs tends to have a sleepy effect on me. I have now reduced my carb intake to about 50 grams. That is like 1/3 of what I was previously eating. And also I have most of this 50 grams of carbs at night in my last meal. So now my first meal is primarily just proteins and fats. This way I get the best of both worlds. I'm still hyper productive for most of the day, and yet I get to enjoy carbs and the sleepiness that they cause during the night. The second way to combat this mid-afternoon crash is by lowering the size of your meals. If you eat anything in large quantities, even proteins and fats, then blood is going to rush from your brain to your gut to actually help you digest that food. And this is what causes you to feel sleepy and gives you that brain fog. So what I do now is that early on during the day when I'm working, I keep my lunch small, enough to just fuel me up, give me some energy and get me going, but not to the point where I'm lethargic and sleepy. And then to compensate for that small lunch, I have a much larger dinner. This way my dinner actually helps me to fall asleep, which is exactly what I want. One key principle that allowed me to transform myself was to make the productive things in your life the most fun part of your day. Early on during my teenage years, my day was just filled with quick pleasures. I would consume a lot of social media content, I would doom scroll, I would play video games where I'm just collecting loot for hours and just trying to level my character up. When you have so many colorful and exciting options of pleasure to pick from, then all of a sudden reading a book which is just black text on a white paper is not the most appealing thing to do. Even when I would sit down to study, I would only do it because I absolutely had to. Deep down, I couldn't wait to just jump back into the game that I was playing. Studying was just an obstacle. It wasn't a thing that I was truly looking forward to. What I've done now with my life is that I've removed all sources of quick fun. I do not binge watch shows, I do not play video games, I do not go clubbing, I do not scroll on social media. And when I tell people this, the first thing that they say is that, "Oh my god, Jibreal, your life is so incredibly boring." And internally, I'm like, yeah. That is precisely the point. When you have an otherwise so-called boring life, then all the other productive things seem to be a lot more interesting. Like, consider this thought experiment. There is this person and he actually wants to read a book on how to expand his business. But the problem is that this person has a blossoming social life. His friends are texting him each night that, hey, come show up, with all these tempting offers. Additionally, he has like a gaming PC set up in his room, and every month there's a new game dropping which requires 50 hours of his time to grind that game out. And also he just discovered Tinder. Now he's hooked to going on random dates with strangers. What do you think is going to happen? The truth is that that book that she was supposed to read is never going to be read. It's going to be sitting there collecting dust on his bookshelf, and it's going to remain untouched for years because he's just so sedated by all these other distractions. Now consider a second scenario. You take that same person with the same book and you put him in a hut in Antarctica. There's no internet there, there's definitely no clubbing there, and there's probably no Tinder either. All that remains is that one book staring right at him. Guess what is going to happen? That book is going to be read, and not just read. He's actually going to look forward to reading that book, because that is now the only thing that can provide him some form of positive stimulation. And this is exactly the kind of environment that you have to create for yourself. Ask yourself this question: What are the ways in which you are sedating yourself right now? Then remove those sedations and tell yourself that I would rather get bored the entire day than sedate myself with a distraction. Because it is in that phase of boredom where you'll actually gravitate towards productive things. Now, this does not mean that all you do is work, work, work and just end up burning yourself out. I still do occasionally watch a good classical movie, or I do play a video game which is story driven and it values my time and does not expect me to grind out 50 hours just to collect some loot. I still socialize with close family and friends from time to time, but now these things are treated as recovery and rejuvenation rather than being viewed as rewards. The reward continues to remain the productive things that I'm doing. I genuinely cannot wait to get back to working even while I'm watching a movie. Now the purpose of that movie or that social event is to actually to get me charged up so that I can get back to my mission. Even though these two principles are incredibly effective, there are still a number of tiny things that you are doing that are impacting your discipline and self-control negatively. So make sure that you watch this video to learn more about them and fix them.